Meeting of the Oxford Historic Preservation Commission to order. Welcome to all of our visitors and guests. We're glad to have you with us today. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda that we all have available to us. Is there a motion that we approve the agenda? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Oh, we're going to take that as a delayed yes.
Yeah, she said aye.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I'll slow down a little bit. Next item is approval of the minutes from July 18, 2022 that we received with the documents that Kate sent. Are there corrections or additions to those minutes as we received them?
I wasn't here, so I'm gonna let it.
I think, I don't think there were any significant errors. I think another proofreading of the minutes would be a good idea, just to look for spelling and details. No problem. Is there a motion that we approve the minutes as presented to us?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Next item is staff report. Ben is approaching the pulpit.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is actually something that came up late this afternoon, and so none of y'all are really aware of this, but we wanted to give you a bit of an update on the Theorem Hamlet house. And I think some of y'all are aware that I guess it was a few weeks ago, Mr. and Mrs. Fancher went before the court again, and the judge gave them a final deadline of 90 days to make improvements to the home. And you know, as such, Mr. Robert Lomanek has been appointed as counsel to the Fanchers, and you know, by the judge. And I don't know if anybody's been over by the house in the last week or two, but if you have, then you've seen some substantial work that has been done. In fact, I was over there this morning, and so I wanted to show you where. So much better. Are you able to see? Wait a minute. That guy here, real quick.
I took pictures too.
I'm trying to, but it says it's looking for the network, so give me 1 second. There we go. Should work now. Maybe it will pop up.
What an attractive family.
Thank you. Well, it's not showing.
I too, I went by today and took pictures. If you want to do something with my pictures on the phone.
Well, I don't know why it's not showing. Yeah. Well, here, I know that doesn't help, but you can see the, you know, this is the second pile of debris that has been there in, I would say, 10 days now. This one's much more substantial than the previous, you know, pile of debris. But this actually incorporates a lot of material that was from the rear portion of the property too. If you look at the front of the house, you can actually see the home now, you know, and so I think that they're making tremendous strides to at least now get the home in a point where a contractor could come in and give a proper evaluation of the needs of repair. There's still some things that need to be done, and I'm gonna let Robert come up here and speak to y'all about some things that they're working on. But I just wanted to give you a brief update of where we're at and the progress that we've made. Oh, great, look at that.
There you go.
Now all of a sudden it pops up. Yeah, technology, isn't it great? So, that being said, here's Robert. I'll let him.
As Ben said, my name is Robert Lomanek. I'm one of the public defenders for the city court here, and I've been made aware of the situation that has been ongoing with the Fancher's house, and the judge thought it prudent to appoint somebody to represent them. And since that has happened, I've been in contact with numerous individuals and organizations that have expressed their willingness to help. Most of this work so far has been done by Ms. Fent, the First Presbyterian Church congregation. As you can tell, it's night and day difference. There's still some work that I would anticipate need to be done around the sides and rear of the house in the form of cutting down some trees. And I'm trying to organize a community event for this coming Saturday, probably around 8 a.m. I work for a couple of hours. I've got some folks who have expressed interest in coming out and help knocking that out. Given that the state of the house is currently, as Ben said, it's in a state where we can have a contractor come over and give an estimate or some type of update on what needs to be done. It's my understanding there's some rotten wood on the rear of the house, on the front as well, that will need to be replaced, and that's out of my area of expertise, so we'll work with my client this week to get somebody over there to give us some answers on that. And then it'll be my job to kind of be the facilitator to make that happen with the folks that have expressed interest. So I believe we're all on the same page now, and we look forward to continue to improve this house. Do either any of you have any questions for me as we move forward?
Based on what we're looking at here, obviously, thank you for what you're doing, and it certainly appears that you're going above and beyond the traditional role of public defender, so we appreciate your personal commitment to this and the resources that you're gathering and the community service possibility. All those things are really so much appreciated. Thank you.
So, well, thank y'all for your time, and if you have any questions or need anything, Ms. Scruggs knows how to find me, and so does Ben as well. So we'll keep pushing on, and I imagine this will be a long process, so we're going to keep doing what we're doing and keep making it look better. So appreciate the time.
Community event, anybody could show up to help out Saturday from 8 until whenever.
That's right. We plan on being there probably 8 a.m. Until we're done, and cutting down some trees, tying up some loose ends to get it fully accessible for the contractor. And Miss Fancher has somebody in mind. I'm going to follow up with them this week. Hopefully, I'll be able to meet them at the house by the end of the week. So,
That's excellent news and a great report. Thank you.
yes, sir.
And thanks to Ben, also, who I think has gone above and beyond his call of duty as far as the city is considered for taking a personal involvement in helping this situation that we all want to see rectified. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, guys, and hope to see some of y'all on Saturday. I know Ben and I will be there, so anybody that wants to help, just get in touch with one of us.
How do you plan to promote or make
Really,
fun awareness?
really, right now at this point, just word of mouth. And I've talked to, 6 or 8 people that have expressed interest and willing to help, and maybe even some Boy Scouts or other organizations that can help after we cut the whatever needs to be cut. They can help haul it to the street. We don't want to send them out there with a bunch of chainsaws or anything. So I've talked to some guys that would be willing to do that, and anybody who wants to can help. And as far as promoting it, really word of mouth now, and maybe I have a call this Wednesday that may provide some help with that as well. So if you know anybody that might be willing to help, pass the word along. Certainly I've talked to Pastor Milner at the First Presbyterian Church. He will also help, and I will talk to our folks at the Methodist Church as well. So,
Can't think of better groups than the Presbyterians and the Methodists to deal with this, so thank you again.
yes, sir. Thank you.
And it really is remarkable. I just happened to drive down the street today, and the open space just sort of jumped out at me. Looks.
Well, I will add to this that the Oxford Master Gardeners are willing to take a hand with this, so,
Excellent. Thank you again.
thanks, Robert.
Any other comments about this? If not, we'll move along on the agenda. There are 4 approvals that have been made administratively that are on our agenda and will be part of our minutes. Anybody have any question about any of those? Or Kate, do you have any comments about any of those?
I would like to note that Angie over here is learning to work on some of these cases, and she wrote those case reports. Those were her first ones, so, yeah.
All right.
Very good. Thank you. The first case on the public hearings is case number 695, a certificate of appropriateness requested by Patrick Carr to make changes to the existing main building and to demolish 2 existing outbuildings and to build 2 new outbuildings at 719 South 8th Street. And Jonathan, we got your message today that we were invited to come and see all the structures that were open, so thank you for that. Kate?
Okay, so this building, you'll recall, was discussed as a complimentary review item at the May 2022 meeting of this commission. The possible demolition of the structure was discussed. And at that time, the commission reviewed a plan proposed for new construction at the property that's similar to this proposal. And the commission requested that the applicant either retain the existing house or provide a structural report stating that the house could not be safely renovated. So you'll notice in the new plans, the house is being retained. They're proposing changes to the front, sides, and rear in areas that are not original to the existing house, or to the original house. So we'll talk about the changes to the main house and the contributing structure, and then we'll talk about the demolition of the 2 outbuildings and the proposed 2 new outbuildings. So first, 719 South 8th Street is listed as contributing in the South Lamar Historic District. I put the full description in your report, but briefly it's described as a 1-story, 5-bay brick vineyard bungalow with craftsman influence built circa 1925. And the 2 outbuildings in question are both listed as non-contributing and are dated a little bit later, roughly. They said 1960 and 1970. So changes proposed to the main house. The application notes that many changes were made to the original house, including changes to the front porch, removal of a portion of the chimney, adding and infilling a porch on the north elevation, and adding a rear addition and apartment. Staff does agree with the applicant that the original building has been highly altered from its original appearance. You can see that if we're looking at this photo, I believe, and I think Jonathan does too, that whole area to the left was a later addition. You can see that change in the flooring when you go into the main house. And then that porch is clearly not original, and I assume was added whenever that expansion was made. Changes to a contributing structure should always be made thoughtfully and carefully. The applicant included a structural report detailing the changes to the building over time, which I found very helpful in evaluating the proposed changes to this building. So I hope everyone had a chance to read that. The applicant proposes removing the front porch to build a new porch, which does include raising the roof line a little bit of the main building. They're going to rebuild the existing fireplace and add back a chimney there. Reconstructing the front roof and increasing the pitch, removing the existing carport, building a rear screen porch addition and side entry porch, a second floor addition, and a master suite addition. The proposed changes to the main structure are significant, and the commission should consider if they meet the recommendations of the guidelines that a new addition preserves significant historic materials and features, preserves the historic character, and protects the historic significance by making a visual distinction between what is old and what is new. While additions and changes to buildings in the historic district are generally kept to the side and rear elevations, in this case, the applicant has presented what staff believes is compelling reasoning and evidence that much of the front elevation is altered or non-original. The commission should consider the new front gable porch and changes to the front roof structure, and if those changes are appropriate. The side and rear additions meet the recommendations of the Oxford Design Guidelines in location, material, proportion, and scale. The proposed roof forms are compatible, and the additions do not remove or obscure character-defining architectural features. So that's everything about the main house. Regarding the proposed site changes and outbuildings, the applicant proposes to remove the 2 existing outbuildings and to build 2 new outbuildings and install a pool. Both of the proposed new buildings are appropriate in scale. They're clearly subordinate to the main house, and the proposed materials are appropriate to the site and in the historic district. Just a final note, this is more for the planning side of things. The proposed pool house will have a guest room space, and so that will need to be approved as a special use through the city's process for accessory dwelling units, and the applicant has already agreed to and begun that process. So staff is recommending approval of the COA. And Jonathan Maddox is here on behalf of the client. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about the staff report or the plans.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe I don't need to explain that. So I think Kate did cover everything very clearly. We are proposing a lot of changes to the house, but we think it really needs that to be, just to properly serve the function of a single-family resident. I think it bears repeating again what was clear in the report, clear to anybody who went to the site. We are changing this from a 6-apartment site to a single-family house. And to be able to make that change, it does require some substantial modifications to what's there. Most of which, particularly on the front elevation, we feel are more compatible with what the house should be than the current conditions are. And there's lots of evidence that that was not how the house was to begin with. Probably not visible on an overhead anyway, so we could pass this down the line. But I do have from the neighbor who lives just to the south a couple of pictures of herself as a young child. She's lived next door to this property for quite a long time. And we have, although very, very hard to read, and we can't make out what it is at all, but there is something on the roof on the front of the house that could very well have been a forward-facing gable. It kind of looks like it might be that way. But there was something about the porch that was much different than the porch that's there now. And secondly, what you'll see in this other picture is that there was a detached 1-story forward-facing garage structure that was there. So I'll just pass that down the line. Just to some history, I think, and some backup that the things we're talking about doing are really compatible with what should have been there. I did realize something that we are doing that maybe I didn't say, but we could quickly see it if we compared this image, which is our proposed front elevation, to the original picture. There's currently a door from the front porch into that side, which is the north end addition. There, see, it's that French door with a flag in it. There's a very clear distinction in the brick there, so we know that that was added for a variety of reasons. But that door, we'd want that door to go away when we take the porch away that's there. And so I don't think I actually said that, but if you compare that photograph to the front elevation, that door is gone. Yeah. So it is a much smaller porch, but a porch that we think is large enough to sit on, which my clients would like to be able to do. There are other houses, in fact, every other house on that block has a front porch that you could sit on that's a more comfortable, attractive place to be than the current porch that's there. There are a lot of issues with the house. I know some of you had the opportunity to go by there. One of the reasons that the chimney's probably gone is that the floor in front of that fireplace has sunk dramatically. So to rebuild that chimney is going to really mean rebuilding that fireplace. To repair the floor structure in that part of the house means really rebuilding that part of the floor structure. As Kate mentioned, the roof, which needs work anyway, you can see it even in the photograph, it's got a sag in it, it needs to be reinforced. Framing, as many houses of this era don't match our current code requirements. And so in rebuilding that, we would slightly change the pitch to make the proportions work better. And then in the rear of the house, where we're going up to accommodate the needs of a family with 3 children, we will have to restructure the ceiling material in that back part of the house, as well as change the roof there. There are issues with the supports underneath the middle of the house, and so all of those things can be rectified, and we are willing to rectify them. But as was our conversation when we came to you before, there's a point where it's sort of more for talk than for any real purpose, given how much of this house we really need to modify to make it not only, repair it, so to speak, but also to make it work in the future. I would at least again bring up the question of whether or not to renovate this house like this is in the best interest of the neighbors and so forth. Any proposal that we would have going forward really would be to build this house. We're all happy with the way the house looks in our proposal and how it functions, and so any pursuit of trying to replace the house rather than renovate it is merely about just common sense and constructability than trying to change it. However, this is where I would like the overhead if I could get it. If and I'm kind of off topic, I know, because we didn't specifically ask in our request to demolish this house, but if we could replace it, as I said, we would build it back, but with one change. And I'd like to show you what that might look like if I can.
Can I just interject for a second? So the commission would not be able to vote on demolition of the structure today because we did not advertise for demolition.
Okay.
So if it does head in that direction, you would need to come back next month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Clarification
about
here.
this through.
You are here asking approval of this, which is a renovation of the existing house.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
But I just want everybody to be on the same page about what that really means and how much of this.
Demolition of the outbuildings.
And demolition of the outbuildings. I think if you went into the one, particularly the one in the rear, there's really no point in renovating that structure. And although we tried to come up with scenarios where we did renovate the 2-story block building, its on the property line, that's not a good thing, and its proportions and scale is not appropriate for the site. So we've asked to tear that one down as well, replacing it with the garage. So those things are happening, and as I said, the house is fixable. It's going to take a substantial amount of work, but it's.
But you're actually showing us how you can do it.
Yeah, and how we would do it.
Yeah.
Did you want to listen to that?
Yeah. But I would say, if we could do it differently, we could make one change that would make this even better. So right now, that north addition, which is right here, plus the door that is right here that would be removed, with a heavy break in this brick, is added on to the original section of the house, the rear of the house. And we could, I suppose, ask to demolish that old porch and rebuild it and accomplish the same thing that I would do if we were able to start over. These on the street at the same time, but I would just step that back just a little bit. Because in stepping it back, it makes that side wing more subordinate to the main structure. That's the perspective we kind of straight on view to.
You zoom out a little bit.
It's probably okay just to leave that image there.
So you'd step back the part that we know to be an addition.
Right. Yeah.
Does the fact that that side over there, correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like it was concrete. on the porch, not
floor.
wood, like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, it
So
was.
how are you gonna deal with that anyway? In other words, you know, how are you not gonna tear that out?
There's a floor built on top of the old concrete floor now, and if we have to keep what's there, then we would just replace the wood structure that's on top of the concrete floor that's there now. I feel like it originally was an open porch, and there are plenty of examples of homes from that era that, you know, had similar, sort of side porches. But there's no clear images of that or real evidence on the inside. And we know from the attic there's a complete break in the structure, so we are 100% certain it's an addition. And just by every indication, it really looks like it was a
Windows
porch
are a
that was
whole modern
infilled.
type in that porch than they are in the rest of the house. They are different.
So Jonathan, just for clarity, this is what you would propose under what circumstance?
New construction.
And the difference, the visual difference in what you are proposing is that that wing on the north side is set back.
Yes.
It would be set back in new construction.
Yes.
So even if you're rebuilding part of the porch, if you're required to retain the structure, you wouldn't do that?
Well, we were attempting to leave it all as it was, if I'm understanding the question. Would we prefer to tear down that old porch and rebuild it this way? Yes, we would, because I think, I don't know, maybe you would agree that it's better all the way around. It really gives us the clear vision of what the original cottage structure shape was and makes that addition subordinate to the primary structure.
Well, why does your proposal that you've presented to us not present just demolishing that part of the house?
At some point, I mean, we will essentially have torn this house completely down and rebuilt it under the guise of renovating it. If we were to tear down that porch, we're already taking the entire roof off. We're having to replace most of the interior floor structure. We're having to repair a lot of piers, as mentioned in the foundation descriptions. So we're, you know, if we're going to be held to a renovation standard, then I wanted to try to preserve as much as I could, because, you know, it's going to fall down at some point if we have to replace it all piece by piece.
Thank you.
There are a lot of reasons why I wish we weren't asking for a renovation, but asking for a new construction. I really think that's in the best interest of not only my clients, but in the neighborhood, because I think it's going to, you know, yield a more attractive structure for everybody. But you know, anything can be done. We can renovate the house, and if that is, you know, what the wish is, then we'll have to, you know, pursue that direction. If this were something that seemed like you agreed with my current thinking, that it really would be better to tear it down, I might ask that we just table this for a month and modify our request. But if you know, don't think that's in everybody's, you know, best interest of time, we'll just keep our proposal.
So Jonathan, you're saying that you will have to put on a new roof, do major renovation inside, do floor work, which if you step in front of that fireplace, you're at an angle for sure, which implies maybe the joists and things like that are not supporting that area. So I assume you'll have to do the plumbing up to date and the electrical up to date? And
Yes, that's 100% starting over, in any case.
so what would be left other than the frame?
Portions of the exterior side walls, and the rear wall, although we're building a porch onto the rear wall and to the side, a master bedroom addition. So although it's still going to be there, it's not going to be the perimeter of the house anymore.
So do you not feel like that maybe it's in the best interest of your client to just ask for this to be tabled and to have us consider demolition?
Well, Is the advertisement specific to which structure? Because demolition was a component of the request, although specific to outbuildings.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, because,
That's calling the lawyers. But traditionally, that's been interpreted as the main structure, the main contributing structure that we have to legally advertise for. The sign goes in the yard, the neighbors are notified by certified mail, all of that. Whereas an outbuilding, a non-contributing outbuilding, we don't do all of that for.
can you split the case in half? Like if we wanted to continue the part about demo and then approve the demo of the outbuildings, can it be, or is that two different case numbers then?
I suppose you could
We
do
could do
that.
a partial approval
And
of
get
the
approval
COA.
for the outbuildings and then consider the main house and the pool. And I don't know how much that would help you.
Well, it would, and in fact, just because of the tightness of the site, probably starting construction on those outbuildings, particularly the one behind the pool, would make sense to, go ahead and begin there and work out front at the street
Yeah.
later.
This sort of seems to me, I mean, this is exactly what happened with the house next door.
Yeah, and I'm not trying
Right.
to pull a fast one on anybody.
I know.
But it is though. I mean, you get into it and then say, we're gonna demolish it. So,
Well, the circumstances of that property next door, if you may remember, was we proposed a renovation. We got into the demolition of that house, and it was literally being held up by air, and we came back and said, this is so far gone, we really need to rebuild it.
right.
We are in a different situation here, I believe. I think this house is in better condition, albeit in bad condition, than that property. I have no crystal ball, but I don't think we're going to get into demolition here and then
That was
say,
kind of
"Oh,
what
wait
I
a
was
minute."
trying to ask,
You know,
was like, do you feel far enough along in the project that is not going to happen again?
I don't think that's going to happen, given the structural engineering,
Yeah, based on Mike's
evaluation
report,
that's
yeah.
already happened, and
Okay.
just the believe it or not, the quality of this house is just better to begin with than the quality of the house next door that we renovated and realized was, completely rotten.
I have a question for Kate. Help me understand the difference in demolishing this house and replacing it with the same house, basically, to the house on Hayes that we did not want to be demolished, but through circumstances it was, and they have recreated
Right.
the house. Why is this not a recreation of a house, which is not what we
It is.
strive for?
It is. And the house next door was a recreation, but that was, Jonathan brought that to the commission, I think, on a complimentary basis, and it was well-liked by the commission, and it was approved. So I see what you're asking. The Hayes House work was done that destabilized that structure, and then they moved forward with reconstructing basically recreation of that house, and in a sense, this would be doing that.
Yeah, and if they had come initially on the Hayes House to say we want to tear it down and recreate it,
Right, we would have recommended a new design. We would have recommended that they pursue a new design rather than recreating the historic house.
I also have to just interject that if you flip back to the existing picture of this house, this is not the Hayes House by any stretch of the imagination. I mean,
Oh, I don't think we're suggesting it is.
We're talking
Yeah.
about two totally different
yeah, I
kind
understand
of
that
ramifications of that decision.
Yeah,
I think he's asking because of the previous actions of the commission.
I know, I
Yeah.
understand, but
Yeah.
I think that's an important aspect of it too. Is that
and I know we don't set precedents by our
Right.
legal precedents by our decisions. I was just curious as to how the staff saw the difference in those two structures.
Well, also the house next door, because we all went through it. Jonathan's right, it was being held up by a whisper. I mean, just, everything was eaten up with termites. I mean, you could kick the brick and it would dissolve. I mean, there just wasn't anything there.
And the structural engineer says that this house is in fair structural condition.
But I think my question was, if you're replacing almost everything, then
yeah, that was sort of my comment about at some point, you're doing all this just to say you did it, because in fact, it's gonna practically be a new house by the time it has new roof structure, new electrical plumbing, which everyone would, but also new floor structures. We're going to have additions that are altering the way it looks.
And the foundation.
And the
under it,
foundation has to be really
and the
shored
chimney
up.
and the roof and the, just seems like it goes someone.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I think we're going to make an attractive renovation or new construction, but it really feels like you just putting lipstick on a pig to try to make the old house look better versus just trying to make a new house. I mean, this is a substantial financial commitment to own a house in this neighborhood. And
What you submitted appears to be much more than lipstick.
right, well, it is, but to warrant, you know, what goes into making this, you know, its value. You want to do that on a stronger foundation than a pieced back together house that was never very nice to begin with.
You guys are both making the same point, I think, and there are some cities that do have percentage of roof framing, percentage of floor framing, like minimums or maximums to what is considered demolition. And we obviously don't have anything like that to consider, but perhaps that's something we should start looking into, is what exactly do we mean when we say demolition? And obviously not in time for your case, but you deal a lot in the historic district as well. So I'm hearing you all struggle with what staff also struggles with when it comes to what is exactly retaining a historic building and what is rebuilding it all in the same spot.
Well, I do know that insurance companies look at it that way, on whether a house is suitable or not by percentage of what has been destroyed or whatever. So I think that was my concern when I started reading everything, and then when I walked through it and then reread it, I thought, well, I mean, it almost seemed like everything was gonna come down or be changed.
So Ben did talk to Paul Watkins, our counsel, and we cannot consider the demolition at this meeting of the main structure. You would have to table that till next month if that's something you all feel would be productive. We can consider the site and the outbuildings if you want to move forward that way.
You know, I think for me, it's not so much about your particular project, it's more of a principle of that I'm confused about. And that is, at what point is redoing demolition? And I get it. If you got to touch everything in it and redo it. I'm also thinking about the yellow house near the north end of North Lamar.
Yeah, which is no longer considered contributing in our resurvey.
Because of the extension, the extensiveness of the, well, I didn't know that.
But because of not trying to cross that line, I mean, that's the reason why we would keep a filled-in porch on the side of the house rather than really change it to the way it really ought to be to just kind of suit the rest of this house, because we're trying to hang on to what we can. So I think we're sensitive to that. But there's a point where, in this particular case, it doesn't really seem logical.
You know, I used to spend some time in the Miami Beach area, and there, historic buildings, as long as they preserve some tiny percentage, it could just be a corner, this much, they do. And then they build a whole new 40-story building around this one tiny corner, which just seems a little ridiculous. But yeah, going forward, we got to figure this one out for its own sake. But going forward, I think it'd be helpful if the city could consider more deeply where that line is.
Yeah, in writing this report and all of us reviewing it, Ben and I were talking about maybe we need some sort of something where the architects and commissioners and us can sort of try to figure out what that means for our community. Retaining houses, what we can find examples of other cities, what they do. Yeah. It's going to be a little bit, it'll be like an ordinance change, or it'll be a little bit of a process, but I do think clarity for everyone would, I don't know that we're going to find a perfect answer, but
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about how we talked about the Hayes House, and I think some of the language was like, it's almost a historic landmark, You know, it's one of a kind, it stands out, something you remember about Oxford, and I wouldn't put what's here now in that class. I mean, it would be remembered because it's a crummy apartment building for college students. So I think that, you know, that's just practical
make a difference.
way of thinking about it, I think.
I will say for your benefit, Blair, the house is not going to be white. This model is white only because we're just not dealing with color.
I was about to ask if it was gonna be brick or.
I wasn't gonna
It would be, I mean, it is brick, you know, even if we changed it, we would be putting it, but we like the way what we've come up with, and everybody would be happy for that, and if we have to renovate it and get it, that's the way we'll go.
So I think our question would be, are you asking us to proceed with this? Or are you asking us to table this and you come back? Because I think we
I
can
suppose
talk about this all night.
another approach would simply be to just ask you to vote on my request as presented for renovation, and I could always reapply. And we could have a new,
Yeah, with the change to the COA.
with the change.
Demolition.
That would maybe eliminate the problematic
Yeah, that would
aspect
be
of breaking
pretty
it
clean.
apart.
We
It would
vote
be
up or
cleaner
down.
that way.
I think that works.
Vote up or down on what you've proposed. And I would say your design, almost either way, I think is certainly, it looks like it could have been there since the 30s. It's a very attractive design, and I want to say this word out loud. You've kept the jerkin head feature on the roof.
Had to work that in, didn't we?
Yeah, I love jerkin head.
I do too.
Yeah.
And I like the swoop in the fireplace, that's original.
Fireplace is still there, yeah. It's a nice design. Other comments from other commissioners on your comfort level in, well, it's not a comfort level, in approving or not approving the proposal that has been presented to us, which is to not demolish, but to rebuild.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with that. You put a lot of hard work into it. And I'm also comfortable with hearing it again.
Same here.
Yeah.
Me too.
Joel?
I love this. One's an expensive demolition, like he's proposing now, because you're gonna replace it one more at a time. The other is a cheaper demolition and rebuild. But you're kinda gonna demolish it either way. You can call it whatever you wanna call it, but ultimately, judging from the condition of that house, you're not gonna have a whole lot left at the end of the day. Now, I didn't say you're tearing all the walls down, you're just changing things out as you, it's just harder and it will cost more money. It will accomplish the same thing in the end.
And I
If we
think,
were to approve this as proposed, you could always come back to the city with modifications, could he not, without having to start from scratch?
that's right.
And we would advertise for another hearing for changes to the previously approved COA, but you would have to specify that it's demolition, because the requirements are different for advertising, but yes.
It sounds like, Jonathan, that we are comfortable with either way, and to accommodate you and the homeowner, I would say, which would you prefer, that we table it, or that we approve it or reject it?
I think so that we could go ahead and take care of some of those outbuildings and begin some of that work. I'd ask that you vote on it as presented.
Okay. So we're being asked to consider the proposal, the entire proposal as presented, which includes the renovation of the primary house, the demolition of the two outbuildings, and new construction. Kate, do we need to approve the demolition of those two outbuildings? We don't, do we? First.
No, with outbuildings, we do it more like a
Yeah.
renewal.
So the question then is pretty well exactly as
Right, the
presented
COA is proposed.
in the COA. Are there any other comments about it? If not, is there a motion that we approve the COA as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? COA passes. Thank you, Jonathan.
Alright, and Joel is recusing from the next case. Erin, dropped off the call, so she's not voting.
So there is no 696?
No. Erin Smith dropped off the call,
Oh,
so
I'm
she did
sorry.
not vote on the last
Yeah,
case.
I-
Joel is recusing from this case, but we do still have a forum.
So we will now hear case number 696, COA requested by Jonathan Maddox, busy boy, for new additions to an existing contributing structure located at 1505 Madison Avenue. Jonathan? Or Kate, do you want to? Yeah, Kate, I'm sorry, Kate.
This is the newest house.
It's huge.
It is huge.
And it just been, what, 2 bedrooms in?
Okay, no demolition on this one. The applicant proposes new additions to the existing contributing structure at 1505 Madison Avenue. We included the whole description from the Historic Resource Inventory Survey in your report, but it's described as circa 1915, 1-story, 5-bay frame with brick veneer, craftsman duplex bungalow. The proposed changes are all additions onto the existing rear and side additions, so additions to additions. Both side elevations will be altered with a garage facing North 15th Street on the west side and a new sunroom porch addition on the east, and then a gabled rear porch addition. The proposed new additions, while significantly expanding the footprint of the building, are located to non-primary elevations and will not alter or change character-defining features of the historic structure. The applicant proposes to match the brick as closely as possible. The new roof form and eave details will be compatible with existing, but the existing bracket detail will not be continued. This is a good fit with the design guidelines. It's a more simple detailing than the main contributing structure. And staff is recommending approval of the COA as proposed. So, Jonathan is here.
Gorgeous house.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, it's interesting. Joel told me, and maybe Jonathan's going to talk about it, but Joel told me that there's still. Wait, maybe you should explain it. I haven't been in the house yet, but it's a really cool.
It's a great old house, and it really, if it's been altered significantly, you know, it still looks like a great old.
Very old, significant alteration.
Well, the thing that it was shocking to me, because I thought this is a great old example of a great house that was built and it's just still like it was, but there's nothing about this house that was as it was.
Really?
The original house was wood siding. The house was always built as a duplex, has been since converted into single family. The front gable that you see and the porch that wraps around did not wrap around. The window in the gable is original. The rest of that gable is new, but the original gable was back over the front door. The wings on both sides of the house are at different times added onto, and they did a great job matching the brick at least 2 times. And so we're hoping for a good, third in our work as well. Some of the detailing on the addition that's on the right as you're facing this picture in the back is very 1970s. It has aluminum windows and so forth. But the addition on the other side is older and better done. But we feel like our additions to those additions are just the next logical iteration of this house. And as Kate said, we feel like they're compatible with the structure. They don't deter from the way this house has been remembered by many people in the last few decades. So it's pretty straightforward. The one thing that we did put in our request, and Kate didn't mention, is there are a lot of doors on this house. There are 7 exterior doors, many of them onto that front wraparound porch. Especially the front door, which is steel, we want to change. But we're not really prepared to show you what those doors look like. I mean, there will be something very similar to that with the transom and side lights, but we don't have a specific request at this time. So we could, but I also thought, because we're not going to change any location of the door, and the style door that we're most likely to ask you to accept in every location except for the front is a door that's just right beside that curved window. So I thought that might even be something that we could discuss now, but let Kate ultimately administratively approve when those door profiles are nailed down. But we will be changing the steel front door and plastic trim around it. But really, the house is going to look, it's staying the same.
Will you be doing anything to those 2 windows in the gable?
Not at this time.
Just looking at the front side of the house, they look more out of place than anything else to me.
Yeah, that's not where they were for a period of this house's history.
Okay, thank you.
But because that whole gable that they're in and section of porch is all new.
Yeah.
new-ish.
Were you able to pull any samples? I didn't look, but maybe, I'll have to look and see if we can see the original footprint. It didn't, they might not have extended that far.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Our suspicion is that that porch was done much more recently than it seems like it is. If you look at the, if you look at the framing on the inside of that gable, for one thing, it's still pretty light colored pine compared to the very old hard pine framing that's most of the rest of the roof structure. But maybe it had to be rebuilt, I don't know. But I think our request is otherwise pretty straightforward in what we'd like to do with the garage addition and master bedroom wing addition on the back. So I won't keep yammering on unless you have questions.
Y'all aren't doing anything with that round window, are you?
That window is boarded up to protect it because I don't think we're not even sure we could replace the glass if we break it. So,
It's hard to get glass.
yeah. So we have encased it in the plywood wall to protect it during construction.
It is really a neat house. I don't know what I was expecting, but I went inside of it and it was great.
You should look back at the realtor listing pictures. It was interesting on the inside. But it's a great house. It is. And I think it will be an even better house with these modifications.
Just scrolling, I can go to anything in particular. Next one.
Other comments or questions for Jonathan about the COA? No? It's very straightforward, and the proposals seem, very appropriate. If there are no questions for Jonathan or comments, is there a motion that we approve this COA as presented?
I so move.
There's a
Do
motion.
you guys want to add in, staff approval for the front door, or would you prefer that they come back?
Say that again.
Staff approval for the proposed front door that Jonathan was mentioning, or they could come back to the commission if you would rather.
Well, and he even includes that in there.
Yeah, I'd like to make it plural though. All the 5 doors that open onto the
Yeah,
front porch.
he says based on consultation with staff.
There's nothing radical there. I just don't think it really warrants us all standing up here again to look at a French door.
Yeah.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? If not, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Request passes. The COA proposal passes. Thank you, John.
That's yours.
Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay. Who seconded?
I did.
Okay, great. Okay.
That concludes our public hearings. Is there another staff update?
No, just if you're signed up for a training on Tuesday at the conference center, it'll begin at 10 a.m. We're having a Taylor Grocery for lunch. And, thanks to Coworth and Associates and Develop Design Studio for sponsoring.
That's next Tuesday.
Next. Right when I start the 23rd. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been
Thank
out
you
of
all.
town, so I didn't know.
Is there any other business that any commissioner would like to bring forward? If not, is there a motion that we adjourn?
I so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.